A quiet base neighborhood at night. A porch light glows over a concrete step. A doorbell chimes once. Inside, two boys sleep. By morning, a federal judge in Savannah says one word that changes everything. Life. You're watching Twisted Case. Careful, fact-first crime stories. If you value documentary precise reporting without sensationalism, subscribe now so you don't miss the next episode. Fort Stewart sits in southeast Georgia, near the coastal plain. It's a large U.S. Army installation with its own schools, chapels, housing areas, and a steady rotation of families. After sunset, the soundscape is familiar. Air conditioners hum. Insects fill the spaces between houses. Motion lights blink on when a car idles by. For most residents, the base feels safe because it is structured, gates, patrols, and neighbors who understand the rules of living close together. We will not name the children or show identifying details. What matters is this. Two boys were asleep in their own beds in August 2017 when a man entered their home and violated that safety. Their parents did what families do on base. They formed friendships, loaned tools, shared rides, and trusted that a familiar face at a doorway meant help, not harm. That trust was used against them. Years later, the federal court would name a former soldier, Austin Michael Burak, age 32 at the time of sentencing. He was tried in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Georgia. The prosecutors were Assistant U.S. Attorneys Sherry A. Stephan and Michael Z. Spitolnik. The presiding judge was Chief U.S. District Judge R. Stan Baker. Investigators included Army Criminal Investigation Division, CD, and the FBI. Those facts set the legal frame. We will stay inside it. Keep the image of a normal base night. Warm air, low light, quiet rooms. Because this story is not driven by a dramatic chase or a forensic twist. It's driven by the tension between what a community believes about its safety and what a careful investigation later proves happened inside a home. Viewers often ask, how could something like this happen on a military base? The short answer is that bases are full of ordinary houses, and most harm begins in ordinary places. The long answer is in the paperwork and testimony that follow. The U.S. Attorney's Office eventually announced that a federal jury convicted Austin Michael Burak of two serious federal offenses: aggravated sexual abuse of a child and abusive sexual contact of child. The crimes occurred on the Fort Stewart Military Reservation in August 2017. After the conviction, the court imposed 2 concurrent life sentences. Concurrent means both life terms are served at the same time, not one after the other. The press summaries are restrained, as they should be. They list the counts, the agencies, and the sentence. When people hear former soldier, they picture a court-martial on base. Here, the trial happened in federal court in Savannah. Why? Because the alleged offenses took place on federal land, and federal statutes apply. Military jurisdiction and federal jurisdiction can overlap, but this case went through the United States District Court. That's why you see both Army CID and the FBI in the investigative record. It's also why the judge is a federal judge and the prosecutors are federal prosecutors rather than a panel of military officers and a staff judge advocate. We also hear that other witnesses came forward. According to the government's account of the trial, 3 additional individuals testified that the defendant assaulted them when they were minors. The jury heard those statements under rules the judge determined were appropriate. This is not tabloid detail. It explains how the jury understood the pattern and why the sentence was so severe. With that context, one question leads the rest. Was this a single night in a single house? Or did that night sit inside a broader pattern of behavior? The trial record indicates that the jury did not see the 2017 incident as an isolated act. The presence of multiple witnesses describing earlier abuse changed the meaning of the August 2017 night. For the viewers, this is where suspicion hardens into understanding. The crimes were not a random intrusion. They were the visible part of a longer pattern that finally met the inside of a courtroom. The story reaches a point that cannot be undone. It can be described cleanly. A caregiver reports. Investigators open a case. Forensic interviews are scheduled. A federal indictment is filed. A jury is selected in Savannah. Each step is specific. Each step moves the case from rumor to record. The sound in this section is intentionally plain. The click of a recorder starting an interview. The rustle of forms. The shuffle of jurors taking their seats. No dramatic stings. The transition we emphasize is ethical and legal, from private harm to public accountability. Once a case number exists, the process must be allowed to run its full course, with defense rights protected and evidence tested. We now walk through the major developments that built toward the verdict and sentence. Each development adds new information or recontextualizes what we already know. We will keep the language direct so that every viewer can follow. In federal court, cases have a clear caption. This one reads United States of America versus Austin Michael Burak. The caption is more than a label. It tells you that the prosecution speaks for the country because the crime occurred on federal land and violates federal statutes. The file lists the statutes charged, the maximum penalties, and the elements the government must prove beyond a reasonable doubt. This is where we first see Chief Judge R. Stan Baker assigned to the case, and the names of the assistant U.S. attorneys who will try it. Viewers often feel overwhelmed by the legal language here. Think of it this way. The indictment is a checklist. Each count requires the jury to answer a precise question. Did the defendant commit a sexual act with a child, as defined by federal law? Did the act occur within the special maritime and territorial jurisdiction of the United States, which includes the Fort Stewart Reservation? Was the victim under the age specified by the statute? The trial is the process of answering those questions with admissible evidence. The courthouse is cool compared to the August heat outside. The hallways are bright but hushed. The air carries the faint echo of footsteps on tile. These details matter because they slow the tempo and remind us, this is not TV drama. It's procedure. Army CID initiates investigative steps related to conduct in military housing. Because the defendant later lived in the Pacific Northwest, CID at Joint Base Lewis McChord and the FBI coordinate across state lines to locate evidence and witnesses. This multi-agency effort is common in crimes that cross postings or state borders. It ensures the case has full coverage even if the defendant or witnesses have moved. As investigators gather statements, a clearer timeline emerges. The central crimes occurred in August 2017 at Fort Stewart, but other accounts describe abuse in earlier years. These additional witnesses provide context that the court later determines the jury may hear under the rules of evidence. The result: the jurors will not view the 2017 incident in isolation. Interviews take place in small rooms with neutral walls, a table, 2 chairs, and a recording device. The rooms are quiet by design. The environment helps children speak without pressure and helps investigators capture accurate statements. Before trial, both sides file motions. The defense challenges what evidence the jury may hear. The prosecution argues for the inclusion of certain testimony and physical evidence. The judge makes rulings to ensure the trial is fair and follows the law. This stage is invisible to most viewers, but it shapes what will be presented in the courtroom. This is also when the court confirms logistics, jury selection dates, witness schedules, exhibit lists, and jury instructions. It is tedious and essential. Without clean pre-trial rulings, trials stall and verdicts can be overturned on appeal. Paper, lots of it. Stacks of motions with tabs. Laptops open to case law. A wall clock ticking while counsel wait for the next ruling. It's the sound of a system trying to get the rules right before the first opening statement. Opening statements give the jury a roadmap. The prosecution outlines what the evidence will show: the night in August 2017, the ages of the victims, the location on Fort Stewart, and the testimony from additional witnesses who say they were assaulted when they were minors. The defense asks the jury to keep an open mind and challenges the reliability or interpretation of the evidence. Witness testimony follows. The boys describe being asleep and waking to the defendant's presence. Their accounts are handled with care. The court ensures the questions are appropriate and that the process does not re-traumatize them. Medical or forensic evidence is introduced where available. Investigators explain how they identified, collected, and preserved evidence. The additional witnesses testify about earlier abuse they say they suffered at the defendant's hands. Each witness is subject to cross-examination. Some viewers expect DNA or dramatic forensics in every case. Many child abuse cases hinge on testimony, timelines, and consistent detail across witnesses. The law does not require scientific evidence if credible testimony proves the elements beyond a reasonable doubt. Closing arguments tie the evidence back to the elements of each count. The prosecution argues that the evidence supports conviction on the charged offenses. The defense argues that reasonable doubt remains. The judge instructs the jury on the law, and the jury begins deliberations. Courtrooms have their own sound. A bailiff calls the room to order. Pages turn. The court reporter's keys click steadily. There is no music. The focus is on words, precise, careful, tested. The jury returns guilty verdicts on aggravated sexual abuse of a child and abusive sexual contact of a child. The court schedules sentencing. For the families, the verdict confirms what they have said. For the system, it moves the case into the final phase, deciding punishment under federal law. When the foreperson speaks, the room is very still. The judge thanks the jurors. The clerk records the verdict. No one cheers. In federal court, the moment is formal because it matters. At sentencing, the court considers the U.S. sentencing guidelines, the seriousness of the offense, the impact on the victims, the need for deterrence, and the necessity of protecting the public. The government argues for a severe sentence. The defense argues for whatever mitigation it can present. The judge imposes 2 concurrent life sentences. The court's language is plain. The sentence reflects the harm done, the vulnerability of the victims, and the pattern described at trial. It also recognizes the jurisdictional setting. Crimes on a federal enclave against children trigger some of the harshest penalties in federal law. The outcome in one line. A federal jury in the Southern District of Georgia convicted Austin Michael Burak of aggravated sexual abuse of a child and abusive sexual contact of a child for crimes on the Fort Stewart Military Reservation in August 2017. Chief Judge R. Stan Baker sentenced him to 2 concurrent life terms. Army CID and the FBI investigated. Assistant U.S. Attorneys Sherry A. Stephan and Michael Z. Spatolna prosecuted the case. Why this matters outside the case. Military installations feel safe because they are structured communities. But structure doesn't eliminate risk. It creates patterns that we have to watch carefully. People know each other, doors open for neighbors, and children move between houses to play. Those are strengths. They can also be vulnerabilities when someone chooses to exploit trust. That is why reporting, training, and consistent enforcement are not box checking. They're the safety net. A life sentence can protect the public. It does not automatically heal trauma. Healing takes time, therapy, stable support at home and school, and the experience of being believed. For families and military communities, it can also mean navigating moves, deployments, and new schools while staying connected to care. Respecting privacy, avoiding rumor, and offering practical help. Rides, meals, childcare are ways communities support survivors without turning them into headlines. If you live on base or in any close community, prevention starts with ordinary habits. Keep doors locked even when you trust your neighbors. Limit who has unsupervised access to sleeping children. Teach children to speak up about anything that feels wrong and believe them when they do. Know the reporting options on base and off. These steps are simple. They make a difference. Night returns to the neighborhood. Porch lights glow. The hum of air conditioners is back. Inside, a parent stands in the doorway of a child's room and listens to steady breathing. The room is quiet again, not because the world is perfect, but because a system did its work and a community stayed present. You're watching Twisted Case, documentary precise reporting, human-centered storytelling. If this approach matters to you, subscribe and share. It helps us reach more people without turning real harm into spectacle.